S&P holds a critical level. Nasdaq futures close over 15,000. MDB breaks out, we'll explain why. NVDA shrugs off China sanctions. Tesla starts a bottoming pattern. Minerva Neuroscience is up 70% today. We'll explain what happened. SOXX was struggling with 500. We'll explain why it's no longer struggling. Micron up $3 after hours. We'll explain why. Bitcoin struggling with the 30,000 level. And one stock with huge short interest that looks like it's getting ready to melt up. We have a lot to go over. Let's get to it. Hey everybody, welcome back. So we're going to start with the basics here. We now have a support level right there, 43.70.75. So we're going to want to watch that tomorrow. If we come straight across here, it just dropped from this control bar. I just want to show you this. You can see how you've been battling in this area over and over again, right? That 4,400, this is where we broke. And then you can kind of see how you kept trying to get over this next level, which was the next bar that actually reversed this whole move. And you're having trouble with that as well. So the question becomes, how are we getting out of this and what's going to lead us forward? Well, I have a couple ideas on that, but first and foremost, we just kind of have to drill into this and say, okay, how good are these levels? And then what should we be looking for going forward? And if we drill into these, we should be able to notice a couple things. The very first thing that we will notice is that 44.26 is definitely an issue. Call it 44.25. Ran up, rejection, rejection, rejection. Fourth time's a charm. We'll find out tomorrow. It's quite possible. Now, we have economic data tomorrow, GDP at 8:30, and that will definitely move the market, as well as you have window dressing on Friday. So we have some catalysts here that can go either way, right? But if we look up here, you have rejection. Now, at the same time you have that rejection, you have this beautiful line that just comes straight across the whole way. Right? Now, whether you draw it that way or you want to go here and say, I want the peak, and then I'm going to draw to this peak, it doesn't really matter. It's same superheated. It's going to get you the same area one way or another, right? Can't get over, can't get over. What do we need to watch tomorrow, right? This is not rocket science. We're going to want to watch that 44.26 level. You're going to want to watch 44 now. And let's clean all this off for a moment and just notice what the RSI is doing. Now, RSI does not determine where the stock goes. It just determines magnitude of the move. So if this starts turning up, it's telling you that the magnitude of the move is going to accelerate, okay? That might lead to up. It might not. We don't know yet, right? It could absolutely roll. But the important thing about this for me is that I have not had higher highs. We have not had them. And we're starting to get them. So in other words, you really didn't have a higher high bar. You had one that was green with the close. You reversed on that the one day in absolute nasty fashion where you opened over it and they just lured everybody in. Now, you got down, closed the low, they make you think that, oh, we're surely going to go down the next day, and then they reverse it again. So there's a lot of games going on here. It's happening at what I consider some critical levels on these names. So let's just drill into these so you can see them. And let's just highlight the one that I think is the most important right now for us to talk about. So this is a 12 SMA. And I just want to point out something that we broke below it. We had every intention of closing below it, and we did not. So this is really important, okay? So this gives us a lot of leeway, gives you a really clear level to watch tomorrow, right? If you break that 4,400, you could retest back down to this level. If we hold this, and we hold this level, and we start going sideways, well, maybe that's something that we can build off of, and we're gonna have to see how that plays out. Now, if you look at the Nasdaq, this was as clear as day, very similar, right? Gap over, brings you down. And you're like, oh, maybe we'll be okay. Gaps you down, closes at the low, reverses, higher high close. First higher high close that we have had since back here on Thursday, June 15th. So we have to take that for what it is. We're sitting right on the 12. I like how this is acting. Now, we're going to have to see what happens with it, but this does make your life very easy as a technology trader. Because if you break this, you're just going to want to get out of the way, right? If you break 14,850, that level right in there, you're going to want to get out of the way. And I'm just going to pop some of these other lines in so you can see. That's going to take you right to what I have is a 22. This is a 55. This is a 200. So if you look at that, right, that's not something you're going to want to play with. And it's definitely something, I'll clean that one out so that we don't get confused. But I would certainly pay attention to this. It's definitely a level that is of interest to me. In the community today, in the Alpha Chasers community, we're pretty vocal about this, and I will show you this real quick so you can watch this for yourself. It's really important when you're trading that you know where your lines are. In other words, is it important that you know where you are with your stocks? Yeah. Is it important that you know what names you want to be in? Yes. But it's also important you know where the indexes are. And I'll just give you a really clear indication. So we're trading in the room today, and then all of a sudden we make another attempt right there. And I just put out a little statement during this that basically just says, I would not do any trades until we get over this level. I would hold off on new positions. If you look at your trades for the day, right as soon as this happened, that was pretty much it. That marked the high, and then we started coming back down from there. By understanding where the indexes are, it allows you to figure out where you're going to put your stops, right? So you don't want to be in a position where you're down here trying to figure out what you're going to do, right? You don't want to be down here. You want to know that you shouldn't be adding up here. You don't want to add at the high of the day, right? And I'll give you a great example. It's not going to matter which name I go to, okay? They're all these highs are going to be around the same area. It's not really going to matter what name that we refer to. You're going to see these highs. They're all going to be around that level. It doesn't matter the industry. It's completely irrelevant, right? All these highs are all around the same level, that 11 o'clock mark. So that's definitely something that we want to pay attention to, and it's something that we want to take a look at. So where am I going with this? You got to look at the indexes all day long. Okay, whether you look at the Nasdaq or you look at the S&P, they're going to move in tandem, and you have to watch them, because if you don't watch them, you're at a big disadvantage. And you could just be stepping on a landmine and not even know it. So I constantly watch those. And then when they bounce, what I like to do is that then I go and look for the leaders and see what's bouncing with it. CVNA was one that I traded today. Did not make a lot on it. I do think this has potential for tomorrow, and I would put this on my list. It could have cared less what the market did today. Could have absolutely cared less what the market did. Now you have GDP tomorrow, 8:30. If GDP's strong, maybe this gets legs. But that is a really nice close. I mean, you're closing at new highs, right? So versus where you've been, you haven't had a close like this in a very long period of time. You'd have to go back to September 22 to get anything like this. So this has real potential to just be a leader and to keep pushing. And that's how I would view it, okay? I would look at this and I'd be very happy with it if I was in this. I had a great day today with it, and I do think that you might want to watch this tomorrow and see how it plays out. Maybe they're expecting something to happen with GDP that's going to lead to the cars. I don't know, but it was the car manufacturers as well. It was KMX. The whole group got a bid today for some reason, so I'm not entirely sure the reason, but there it is. Now, NVIDIA completely blew up that news. Like, they could have cared less about it. I guess a better way of saying it is blown off that news. So the purpose of this was more sanctions, more restrictions on China. Look, if you're sold out of a chip, it doesn't matter who you put restrictions on. Okay, they're already at capacity. What are they going to do? It's kind of silly that it sold down on it, but we took advantage of it. I traded it a couple times today, and I added to a longer term position. Now, does this hold? It's the third time I'm at this level. It is the third time I'm sitting right there. Do with that what you will. If I drill into this a little bit and start putting these levels in there, you can see the 12 here, how we touched it, unable to get over that, right? And let's throw in the 22, and you can see how we're wedged in here. This makes my life very easy, because if I close under that 22, I don't want to be in this. Meanwhile, I'm willing to stay in it as I fight to get over that 12. I like this a lot here. I think it's a really interesting spot if you can hold here. And I think you have a shot at it. I think that we saw weakness at the end of today because of Micron, right? Not a lot of people are going to want to hold Micron into earnings or hold semis into earnings after just completely getting beaten around. You know, a lot of people just really getting crushed here with the pullbacks. A lot of people are not used to the fact that there's no Fed. Right? People always complain about the Fed, but I don't think they truly understand how much the Fed had their back for about the past 12 years. So there's no Fed anymore that's intervening in the markets. Even though they said they weren't, when you're buying bonds, you're intervening in the market. So if you take a look at how this is acting, you're actually trading up on the news. If we drill into earnings and take a look here, at how they're doing, and they raised a little bit on the revenue side, but they beat on the earnings side, so that's really kind of what we're looking for. We're recording this before the conference call, just FYI. So we're in this range. We're unable to break that 22. We look like we're going to get back above the 12. I think we look okay. We'll see how this plays out. This is driving the SOXX over 500. And again, it's all the same soup, right? We're pulling back and then we're clearing these levels. Some of these stocks are getting back over key levels and sectors are getting back over key levels. Some are not. And we have to watch that. You know, the one thing that I kept saying today, and I always watch my verbiage, we're struggling. We're struggling to get through this. We're struggling for NVDA to, once a gap filled, right? Like this was a really very simple trade this morning. It was just silly the way that it dropped, but we can show it on this chart, actually be cleaner. But if you look at this, the way that they dropped this today was just absolutely silly on this news. But you just have a cat in a hot tin roof right now as far as traders. And you can kind of take a look at this and see what's going on. Let me just pull that up and you can see what I mean here. So you see that little move off the open straight down, then we rallied. This is a pretty simple trade. And then all you did was just go to the gap fill. And by go to the gap fill, all we did was just, here, I'll show you. Always want to mark these off exactly where you were the previous day, right? You always want to go to those closes and see how you act when you get up there, because that's where the people could sell before the news hit, right? And there they are getting out, right? Kind of near that high of that 11 o'clock we just talked about. So overall, I think you're okay here, but we're going to have to see how this plays out tomorrow. You're starting to see a little bit of a pattern, but show you this, and we're going to kind of see if this holds water, but it's kind of in here, but not a 100%, right? You're starting to see this right here. Okay, so from this little part up here, this wick would be price rejection. You're kind of wedging in here. That's not ideal. That's not really what I want to see. I'd like to see more of a base and then breaking out. But what this does do is it gives me another inflection point in here to watch. So I'm constantly looking for different inflection points that I can go off of. And this is definitely one of them that I'd be paying attention to, especially right in here. I really want to pay attention to how we act here. And that's one of the core reasons that when you start looking at these, it really makes a big difference, right? So I don't want to be breaking that level. It's definitely something that I want to hold, that 22. And if I start to break it, I might become a little concerned there. But what you want to note is you want to note what stayed up on the day, what didn't stay up on the day. And so you can see very clearly here, Snow tried all day to stay up. I felt like we were going to rotate into software and then they swept the legs out of software. But I'm not crazy when you don't finish 50% up on the bar, right? I'm just not crazy about that. It means you had sellers all in here, meaning these people that were in here, they decided to get out. I really don't want to see that. Now, this makes a lot of sense because you just had that doji yesterday. You had a massive sell the day before. So you have some reasons why some people are going to want to get out of this. But that said, I would want to try to stay with this. Now, you saw some of these other names breaking out today. This firm, Tiger, came out and put a $500 target price on MDB. I don't know anything about them. I've been waiting for this to break. And then it broke and moved within a moment. But I have the same kind of thing going on here that I'm just not crazy about these kinds of moves where I'm right there and I can't stay 50% up on those bars. That's very bothersome to me, and it means that you had, in that range, you had more sellers than buyers, even though you're up. I don't want to see that. Now that could be GDP tomorrow. That could be end of the quarter. A lot of traders I was talking to are just basically like, you know what, I'm going to give it a couple days here. We should just talk about the Qs sitting at 22 as well. They need to hold in here. We tried to break out today. We did make the higher high, which is nice. And we'll see what comes tomorrow. GDP will drive the opening very, very clearly. You are watching Tesla try to push 2. And I would strongly suggest, whether you use a 20 or a 22, I would strongly suggest you watch how they are acting. The biggest takeaway that I could tell you for me, and looking at all of this, is, let me show it to you this way, it'll just be cleaner. I keep watching these levels and we keep rejecting these levels in all these different names, in all these different sectors. And I don't want to keep doing that, right? Eventually, that means that there's too much supply for the demand that we currently have. And that will lead to a possibly lower pricing. And I think that could happen here. But for us, what we have to do is just focus on the core issues. Now, you always are going to have these outliers. Today, this was a very easy trade. This was NERV, something we bought in the Alpha Chasers community down here, right, like literally right off the open. I'll just walk you through it very quickly. It essentially was a PIPE, private investment in public company. And what that means is that someone gets a private equity share in that form, right, in the company. Now, what's nice about these pipes, if you're an investor and you can get into them, is the fact that they give you warrants. Warrants are the equivalent of a private option. Okay, it's a call option. So this was done, and let's go back and take a look at this on the hourly. So if you look at a secondary, how many times have you seen a secondary, which essentially is what a pipe is, close at 6, and then they're doing the secondary at $10? Well, that's where they priced this pipe. That's not usually where you price a pipe. You price a pipe somewhere down here, like $5, $4.50, plus a kicker of the warrants, right? Because they need to raise money and they can't raise money any other way. Therefore, they are starved for the money. Well, this decided to come out $4 higher and they were oversubscribed. So all of a sudden what happens is everyone that thought that they had all the time in the world to buy this just realized that there's so much demand out there that they're selling this at $10. Well, now they're selling it at $10. So for us, just being traders, it was really very simple to look at this and go, okay, well, we know that this has got to go higher. Because if you couldn't get it at $10 and now you realize that you're not going to get the stock, you're not going to get the warrants, you're going to go out there and buy. So we bought it off the open. It gave us a couple like fake outs, but you never had a follow through on the fake out. Here off that opening price, you never really had that break follow through, right? I always kind of look for something there, especially those smaller guys. They usually play with you. And then they just ripped it and the rest is history. Then he went on CNBC and here we are. Now, the thing about these names that usually happens is they want to hedge the pipe, right? So they want to hedge the private equity piece, which is when you're at $10. And the reason they want to hedge it is because they have a free trade with the warrants. So if you hedge out the stock, if you take a look at like where 10 is roughly right here, they hedge out the stock by shorting stock against the private investment, and then they just have the warrants for free. And then they just sit with the warrants and they see how the trade goes and they trade around it and go from there. So I don't know how much more this has. I would just say that from this range, understand that they did a secondary that was so oversubscribed that they priced it about $4 higher than where this closed, okay? And this is the outcome and what happened today. So this was a fairly simple trade. That's it.